What is going on, everybody? Pherix here, back with another video. In today's video, we're going to be going over add-ons and macros for Fire Mage in patch 8.3, specifically for PvP. If you guys enjoy, make sure to leave a comment, like, and subscribe, and we're going to get right into it. Alright, first up, we're going to go ahead and go over our add-ons. Now, add-ons, I think, are a very important piece when you're trying to push that rating. If you're doing BGs, arenas, 2v2 or 3v3, they're all very important, and you can use them very well to your benefit. I'll go over a few add-ons, what they do. I'll show a few clips of them. First up, we're going to go over Arena Team Tracker. Now, in Arena Team Tracker, what will happen is that your team will actually, it'll show their cooldowns on the side of your frames now. It will actually show the cooldowns, offensive and defensive cooldowns typically, of your team members right there. And you'll be able to see, what they have. You'll be able to track those. You can change them around, add some if you'd like, or maybe take some off. It kind of depends. Very preference, but I think it's really important to, watch those cooldowns of your team, especially if you're playing with the healer or something and you're not in voice chat and you can't communicate, to make sure, what do you have or what does the healer have, so you can communicate with that better. Next up, I'll go over things like Dampening Display. I think this one's pretty obvious, it shows dampening up at the top. I think that's a pretty good one to have. You don't necessarily need to have it, though. It's kind of one I like to have as well. Now we'll talk about Gladiator Liss and Gladius. Now, I think both of these are actually really, really big, important add-ons to have, especially Gladius itself. Now, Gladius does come in the form of having that 2 or 3 person layer, and is the arena enemy unit frames. And it shows, their trinket, if they have one, Relentless, if they're getting dispelled, a little buff on them like Divine Favor. Shows their health pool, if they're casting something, and you can move it anywhere you want. Very helpful, very nice to have, especially if you're trying to watch those cooldowns, watch what they're doing, if they're getting low, if they're getting healed up, whatever. I definitely think Gladius is one of those that it's almost required to have if you're trying to do arena. It's just such a good add-on to have. It really is actually insane. And, I'll show a little bit of gameplay of that. I definitely think Gladius is just actually too good to have. And next up, we'll go over Gladiator Liss. This one, I think, is kind of important, especially if you're just now starting off. You're being fresh into the scene, PvP. Even if you're a little more experienced, I think this one is really important as well. What Gladiator Liss actually does, it will come in and it will alert you when something happens. And you can program it to, whatever you'd like. It comes with already a few preset things, such as, enemy trinket, or they pop Dark Soul, you're getting Chaos Bolted, it'll say, it'll say, Chaos Bolt coming in, or, Dispel, you're getting polyed, whatever, it can, and then you can, time it, so it'll say, if you kick somebody, that'll say countered. Very, very cool add-on right there, very, very nice to have as well, kind of just like a little edge up on people, and you'll be able to see some things like that. I think that's pretty cool. Next up, we can go ahead and talk about things like weak auras. Now, for weak auras, this one's a little niche. You don't technically really need to have it. However, I do think it's kind of important, and especially for any part of the PvP scene, even PvE at all, even all over WoW, a lot of people are playing weak auras. You can have things like a nameplay right here. You can have things like, I've got a Racing Pulse proc, so when I proc the Racing Pulse from my haste gear, for my corruption, that'll proc. I mean, I think that's really, really cool there. I've got, secondary stats, like down here, it shows me my crit, haste, mastery, versatility, and leech. I think that's kind of really cool too. You can really do a lot of crazy things with weak aura, and you can customize them to your benefit, so you can really, really get that advantage. And then the last one I want to go over for add-ons here is Omnibar. Now, Omnibar, again, I think this is one of these add-ons here that is too good to not have. Now, Omnibar, what it does is it will display a huge little bar of enemy cooldowns, whether they be offensive, defensive, whatever. It will immediately load them in to the enemy characters, and it will tailor it. So if you're fighting a Warlock, you'll see Dark Soul. You'll see, other things. It'll be pretty important. You can kind of really pick out those cooldowns that you want to track, and then as soon as they're used, it'll immediately be put on cooldown so you know when they're going to come back. Very, very important. And you can put some on there that you want. You can take others off. Like I said, I think Omnibar is an actually great add-on to have. And if you don't have it, I definitely think you are missing out on the action. And I believe that's pretty much going to be it for our add-on section. Those are all the ones that I highly recommend for PvP. If you can get them, that would be great. I think they will definitely benefit you in your arena gameplay or your rated BG, whatever. Definitely think those are very good. Next up, we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about our macros here. We'll get right into it. There are a few different types of macros I want to go over today. And I think a few of them are cosmetic. I'm not really going to talk too much about these. Like this Arcane Intellect one that has a bubble wand bound to it. I don't think that's really necessary. I want to go over the Arena 1, 2, 3 macros. I want to go over Focus macros. I want to go over my Combustion macro and a Mouse over macro. Now, what macros do, the same thing kind of with add-ons. They help you ease your gameplay. You can bind them to certain things. Instead of having to click on enemy frames or do this or do that, you know, instead of having to click all those abilities individually and then click the frames, you can bind them and then it'll immediately do it. That's the first thing I want to talk about is our Focus Harm. And you can do this with Polymorph or Counterspell as a mage. Do it with other spells too, but this is pretty much what you use it for. For example, with Counterspell, I have it bound here to number 3 on my mouse. And what that does, you know, I'm able to click the button and it will immediately kick my focus target if they are casting. Whether or not I'm targeting them. If I'm not, you know, it'll immediately kick them, and I think that's really good to get that kick right there. That way you don't have to waste your time trying to click on that frame, find him, click on the frame, and then you have to, you know, do the things in terms of clicking on them and then realizing where they are. Then you have to hit the kick. It's kind of like that. I think that's really important to have this that focus harm. Same thing with the polymorph. You can do the same thing. You have that focus poly, so you can hit your key and it will immediately poly your focus target. And you know, like I said, you don't have to worry about clicking on their frame and figuring that out. I think that's really, really important right there. And next up, we'll talk about Arena 1, 2, 3 Counterspell and Polymorph. Now, same thing here. It kind of goes with Focus, but instead of having Focus, you can have them set up as Arena 1, 2, 3. Now, what Arena 1, 2, 3 is they are targeting for your big, like your polys and your Counterspell. Instead of having to do the clicking, and instead of only being able to do one target with your Focus Harm macros and poly, you'll actually be able to do Arena 1, 2, 3. You can set up individually, you know, cast, you know, at Arena 1, at Arena 2, and at Arena 3 on those counter spells. You can bind them, you know, to something like Control 1, 2, 3. I think that's a really good keybind for these. And instead of having to target, you can go Control 2, and it'll immediately kick that second person on in their team. Whether you can find that from the Blizzard Arena frame, or you can find that from Gladius. And, you know, that is just pretty much it right there. Same thing with Poly. You can do the same thing. You know, you have at Arena 1, at Arena 2, and Arena 3. These Poly macros and Counterspell macros will save you a lot of time. Especially when you are trying to get the quick polys, the quick kicks. So you don't have to worry about that wasting time, clicking on them, figuring out where they are, and doing that sort of a thing. Next up, I'll go over a few things like the mouse over meteor macro. A lot of people ask me about this and how I get meteors down on the ground so quick. The reason being is that I actually have a show tilted meteor with a cast at cursor. Now what this does, it will actually, wherever my cursor is, I will cast a meteor, and I don't even have to confirm it on the ground. There's none of that, like green circle. Like here I am looking at it like with the flame strike. However, with the meteor, all I have to do is hit that number 3 key on the keyboard, and it will immediately put it down right there. That's simple. Very, very quick and efficient when you're looking for that snapshot meteor on somebody really far away, or you just need to get it down on the ground quickly. You don't have to target it. You don't have to re-click. I think this macro is very, very good as well. Next up, we'll talk about things like Focus GPI. Like I said, you can do the same thing just like you do with your Focus Kick and your Focus Poly. Focus GPI is something really, really important. If you have this, you're able to get those GPIs on an unsuspecting target. You can target the other enemy, hit that Focus GPI, and then you're able to, you know, get it done. They don't see it coming. You get that Focus GPI, you can set up on them, and you can do big damage here. I definitely think having the focus G-Pie is a really, really important one to get, and then master that one, right? I think that's really, really important. I've got things like Ice Block. If you have an Ice Block macro, I highly recommend, or if you don't have one, sorry, I highly recommend you do have one. The reason being is that Ice Block typically, sometimes it won't actually stop your cast. It might go through and then you might actually die because of it. So in this macro here, I have a /stop casting command right before casting Ice Block. That means if I am casting any ability whatsoever, like this Flame Strike here, I can immediately press block and I will go right into block instead of having it wait a little longer and then go into block. I think that can definitely save your life, and I think it's really important. I also have a cancel aura Ice Block right after that. What that does is if I cast it again, if I hit the same button again, it will actually cancel. It will actually cancel the Ice Block, and you'll be able to come out immediately. So if you just want to use the Ice Block as a break to CC, you can hit the button twice really, really quickly. You go in, out, you break that CC just like a trinket. A very, very good one to have as well. I definitely think quite important to have. If you guys do not have a Ice Block command, I at least highly recommend you get that stop casting in there to make sure you get those blocks off correctly and you don't die without blocking. That has happened to me, and it is super unfortunate. So that's pretty much that. I'll go over combustion here. Combustion, pretty much the same thing. I like binding a badge if you have one, and if you're playing Orc, you can blind Blood Fury, and then you have a few cosmetic things. But just having these all bound at the same time, making it so you don't have to press multiple buttons for it, I think is really important too. You don't necessarily need to have this, but if you are playing Orc and you have a badge or whatever, you want to bind a claw to it or something off the GCD, the global cooldown. I think that's really important to get that macro in there and have it secured. Get that in there and then replace your other combustion with that, and it will pretty much do the same exact thing. Other than that, we've got remove curses. You can just do /target people for that. For shimmer, pretty standard. You could have a stop casting if you want that. I'll go over counter spell here. I've got a focus counter spell, and then there are a few things that you're gonna want to cancel aura too that aren't gonna be helpful to you. So you have things like Displacement Beacon. There are a few things from Arcane Mage that they'll keep counterspelling you, or spell stealing. You can spell steal them back. There are a few things like here, Slow Fall, Umbral Shell. They'll pre-buff themselves to whatever, so Purge Protection. But other than that, Blessing of Protection, you can get rid of that too, Holy Ward. There are a few things you can put them in there if you want it. If you never play with a Druid and you don't want Druid Hots or whatever, you can cancel or those. These kind of depends on what you really want. You only have 255 characters to make it happen, though, so you can get a few spells in there and then cancel aura them, which is kind of important if you're going against another Druid and you really want to get those locked in. And spell steal, cancel aura immediately. You could do the same thing with combustion even if you wanted to from another mage. I think that's really important as well. But yeah, other than that, I believe that is pretty much all we have here for our macros as well. It's gonna be just a pretty quick and informative video here. Pretty sure I think that's gonna do it. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you do. I'll be trying to put out more Mage content in the near future for you guys. Try to help you out. Thank you again for watching, and have a good one.